Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
We didn't talk much during dinner. She had made that same lifeless chicken again, the one she always threw together when she didn't want to put in the effort but didn't want to say she didn't care. I didn't mention it. I'd stopped pointing things out a while ago. She waited until I finished chewing, wiped my mouth with a napkin, and reached for the water glass. That's when she slid it across the table, the envelope. Smooth, intentional. Like she'd rehearsed the gesture in her head. I didn't reach for it right away. She sat back in her chair, arms crossed loosely, watching me. Her expression wasn't nervous. It wasn't sad, either. Just composed. Maybe a little smug. That look people wear when they think they're in control. Not victorious. Not joyful. Just secure in the assumption that the other person will react exactly how they need them to. I want a divorce, she said. No throat clearing. No dramatic build-up. Just words dropped between us like a dull stone on a table. The kind of line meant to provoke, not inform. I looked down at the envelope, unsealed. She wanted me to open it. So I did. Inside were the papers. Clean, neat. One copy. Her name first on every page. Of course. No surprises. She wasn't greedy, just strategic. Nothing outrageous, just a tight list of requests framed to look fair. She consulted someone, and she expected me to argue. Instead, I picked up the pen from the side drawer of the dining hutch, the same one I used to use when we paid bills together, and signed every blank space in silence. Left-handed, clean strokes. No scribbles. No hesitation. When I finished, I slid them back across the table. I watched her face. There it was, a half-second flicker. Confusion. Not disappointment. Not anger. Just disruption. The playbook had left that part out. She had expected resistance. A raised voice, maybe. Hurt feelings. Desperate questions. A conversation that gave her the chance to explain how unhappy she was, how she tried, how I wasn't present or exciting or ambitious enough. That was the game. Serve pain, receive validation. Push, then wait to be pulled. She didn't get any of that. I stood, grabbed my jacket from the hook near the door, and said, "I'll be out for a while." Her expression didn't change, but her posture did. She sat up straighter. Shoulders tensed, like she wasn't sure if this was part of my shock or something else. I stepped outside. The air was colder than I expected. Mid-March chill. The kind that bites harder because it pretends to be spring. I walked without thinking, just let my legs move. One street, then another. I didn't have anywhere to go. Not yet. But I also didn't need to be in that house anymore. I let my thoughts drift as I walked past the quiet rows of manicured lawns and empty driveways. Her voice echoed in my mind, not tonight's voice, not the calm one. The other one. The voice from 3 weeks ago, when she told me I lacked ambition. "Sometimes I wonder what I'm even doing here," she said, standing in the doorway with her arms folded tight across her chest. "You're comfortable just existing. There's no fight in you. No drive." I remember shrugging. Not dismissively, just truthfully. "I work. I come home. I don't cheat." I thought that counted for something. "It's not enough," she had snapped. "I need to feel desired. I need someone who challenges me." I could have told her she used to say she wanted peace, not passion. That I'd built a life around reliability because that's what she asked for in the beginning. But I didn't. Somewhere along the way, she stopped wanting peace. She wanted to be chased. And I stopped running. It wasn't resentment. Not even fatigue. It was just done. I had been done for a while, but I kept showing up, paying bills, making coffee in the morning, washing dishes after dinner, quiet routines performed by a man who no longer believed any of it meant something. She thought she was leaving a man who'd collapse without her. What she didn't realize was, I'd already left. The next morning, I packed everything I owned in 4 duffel bags in the lockbox I'd kept buried in the back of the closet behind the winter coats. She was still in bed when I left. Or maybe just pretending to be. Either way, I didn't bother saying goodbye. I didn't leave a note. Just the silence. She didn't call. Didn't text. And I didn't expect her to. That part of the plan only works if the other person reacts. When there's no reaction, the performance gets awkward. I moved into a short-term rental just outside the city, fully furnished, clean, bland, and temporary. A mattress that didn't sag in the middle. Coffee already stocked in the cabinet. The kind of place designed for someone between lives. I didn't unpack much. Just the basics. I was stepping out of the old one. 2 days passed. Nothing from her. Then on the 3rd day, I started getting the soft probes, the indirect ones. A message from our mutual friend Mark. "Hey man, just checking in. Heard you guys were going through some stuff. You okay? I replied simply. Yeah. No elaboration. That's how you get them to talk. 30 minutes later, he sent another. She didn't expect you to go quiet. Thought you'd try to talk her out of it. I left that one on read. It must have unnerved her, this version of me. The quiet one. The man who didn't chase, didn't cling. She'd built this narrative where I was the stable, predictable constant. And now that constant had vanished. The real shift wasn't the move. It wasn't even the divorce. It was the absence of emotion. I didn't ask for anything. And for a woman who needed to be wanted to feel right, that kind of silence hits harder than screaming ever could. On the fourth day, I met with my divorce attorney, someone I'd quietly vetted a week before she handed me the papers. A good guy. Sharp. Not flashy. Just surgical. He asked if I wanted to fight for the house. I said no. Custody? Alimony. No kids. No need. Just cut it clean. He nodded slowly, taking notes. You're not what I expected when I read the case brief, he said. Neither is she, I replied. That same afternoon, I made another stop. A bar just off the highway, one of those old places that hadn't changed its wallpaper since the early 2000s. Booths with cracked leather. The jukebox still worked. She was already there when I arrived. Her cousin, Amanda. Tall, quiet, always a little too observant at family gatherings. She used to sit near the end of the table during holidays and watch the room instead of joining in. The kind of person people assume knows nothing just because she doesn't speak often. But she knew things. I'd always suspected. She stood when I entered, gave a small smile, polite, not warm, and slid a folder across the table. Thought you might want to see this. I didn't open it right away. I just looked at her. How long have you known? Longer than I wanted to, she said. But when I realized you weren't as clueless as she thought, I figured you deserved the rest of it. Why now? Amanda stirred her drink with her straw, then looked at me without blinking. Because I don't like being used. And she's been using everyone. I nodded, tapped the folder once, then slipped it into my bag without a word. We didn't need to say much more. The truth is, Amanda never liked me. But she respected how I treated her family. She saw the difference between how I moved and how her cousin spun her games. That was enough. Later that night, back at the rental, I opened the folder. Emails. Screenshots. A few printed messages. Nothing explosive, not yet. But enough to build a picture. It wasn't a need for freedom or self-discovery like she'd framed it to her friends. She was seeing someone. Before she asked for the divorce. Someone I used to know. And suddenly, everything clicked. The sudden mood swings. The passive-aggressive comments about what real men do. The way she'd started dressing like she wanted to be noticed by someone else. She didn't leave to find herself. She left because she thought she had someone waiting. It didn't come from Amanda. Not directly, anyway. The folder she gave me held the skeleton, enough to confirm the affair existed, that it started before the divorce conversation, that it had been going on longer than I ever let on. But the real name? That came from someone else. An anonymous message hit my inbox 2 nights later. No subject line. Just one sentence. He was never loyal to you. Not then. Not now. Attached was a photo. Grainy. Surveillance style. The kind you only get from someone who either wants to help or wants to be left out of it. She was sitting at an outdoor cafe across from a man, smiling, leaning in close, her hand on his wrist like it belonged there. But it was the man who hit harder than the pose. Jason. Of course. I stared at the screen for a long time, waiting for something inside me to react. Anger. Maybe. Shock. But all I felt was recognition. Like finding the final piece of a puzzle you already knew the shape of. Jason and I had started a company together 6 years ago, tech-adjacent, boutique, built around a simple system for project coordination. I had the operations knowledge. He had the charisma and capital. We made a solid team until we didn't. He claimed he wanted out. Said he was burnt out, needed a break from the pressure. I bought him out of his share, shook his hand, and even gave a speech at his farewell dinner. Told the team he'd always be family. I didn't realize how literal that phrase would become. It all made sense now, the little comments she made when I stepped away from the company. The sudden shift in her tone. The way Jason had just disappeared. No drama. No bad blood. Clean exit. Too clean. Turns out, he wasn't stepping away from pressure. He was stepping into my life. Or at least, what he thought would be my leftovers. I leaned back on the rental's threadbare couch and closed my eyes, letting the timeline align itself in my head. There wasn't just betrayal here. There was calculation. She hadn't just drifted. She'd pivoted. She thought she was trading up, leaving the quiet husband for the man with a louder smile. More flash, less substance. Jason always had that edge, could make people feel like they were the only one in the room. He'd do it at meetings, bars, fundraisers. I used to admire it. Hell, I even defended him when others called him manipulative. That's just Jason, I'd say. Yeah, that's just Jason. And now, I had a decision to make. I didn't want revenge, not the kind that screams or breaks things. I wasn't about to go around slashing tires or leaking screenshots. I'd outgrown that kind of mess. It was about making sure she understood what she really lost. Because here's the part she never saw coming. I wasn't a man who'd been left behind. I'd been moving ahead the whole time. I picked up the phone and made 2 calls. One was to Amanda. The other was to a contact I hadn't spoken to since the early startup days. A guy named Ellis, who'd been one of the early angel investors Jason pissed off just before he exited. When he answered, his tone was guarded until I introduced myself. Ellis, it's been a while. Yeah, he said after a pause. You good? I'm better than I've been in years. Listen, you still tracking Jason's new ventures? Unfortunately, he's been circling a few of us for funding again. You thinking of jumping back in? I smiled. Not exactly. Just wondering how public your exit story really was. Not public enough. Let's change that. We didn't need anything dramatic. Just a few conversations with the right people. A few names connected to Jason that no longer wanted to be. A few truths made visible to the people he was trying to impress. It wasn't about revenge. It was about repositioning the chessboard while they were still busy playing checkers. And while all that was happening, I went quiet again. Which, apparently, got to her more than I realized. Because 4 days after the leak, I got another message, this one not anonymous. From her. Just one line. Can we talk? I didn't answer. Let her feel what it's like to be cut out without a sound. The message sat there, unread, for 2 full days before I opened it. Can we talk? 3 words. Not I'm sorry. Not I made a mistake. Just that. Like she didn't know what version of me she was reaching out to anymore. I didn't reply. The truth is, I'd already started to forget what her voice sounded like when it wasn't loaded with criticism or distance. It's strange how quickly absence rewires everything. You think love fades slowly, but sometimes it burns out the moment you stop lighting it yourself. Amanda texted me the next night. She's unraveling. Said he's not returning her calls. I didn't need to ask who he was. Jason. Apparently, Mr. Confident had gotten skittish once the funding talks dried up. A few quiet conversations had spread through his circle, nothing public, just enough whispers to make the money men tighten their wallets. Suddenly, he wasn't such a good investment anymore. And if Jason wasn't climbing, he wasn't interested. Her golden parachute turned out to be a paper kite in the rain. Amanda added. She said he told her he wasn't ready for something serious. After all that, for a woman who thought the next chapter of her life had a better co-star, realizing she was just an intermission hit harder than I could have planned. He was never going to be her future. He was just a detour, a thrill with an expiration date. She didn't see it until the calls stopped, until the texts were left on read, until he moved on like she never existed. That's when she showed up at my apartment. I heard the knock before I saw her, soft, almost hesitant. I watched through the peephole for a full minute before opening the door. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not in size, just presence. Her posture was tense, shoulders hunched like she was bracing for impact. No makeup, hair pulled back, none of the performance. Hey, she said. I didn't move from the doorway. She swallowed. Can I come in? I stepped aside, wordless. Let her enter on her own. She walked in slowly, like the room might collapse under her weight. Looked around like it surprised her that I'd made a life without her, even if it was just temporary furniture and silence. It's nice, she said. She turned to face me, eyes searching for something familiar, some sign of the man she used to control. I didn't come here to fight. Good, I said, because you'd be alone in that. I made a mistake, she said, a little louder. Jason, he wasn't what I thought. It's not what I wanted. Not really. I let that hang there. No eye contact. Just silence. I thought I needed something different. I thought you'd. She paused, tone faltering. I thought you'd try to stop me. There it was. The confession beneath the confession. She hadn't expected me to let go. She wanted resistance. She needed my reaction to justify staying or leaving. But I didn't give her either. Instead, I gave her what she claimed she wanted, freedom. She didn't know what to do with it. I miss you, she whispered. I miss us. I could see the tears forming. Real ones. Not the grief of losing a man, but the realization that he might not want to be found. I know I hurt you, she said, but I want to make it right. I walked over to the side table and picked up the envelope I'd set there that morning. It wasn't thick, just a few printed pages. I handed it to her without speaking. She opened it slowly, brows furrowing. At the top, a thread of emails. Her and Jason. Forwarded by Amanda. She skimmed the lines, some planning, some flirting, one message where she referred to me as dead weight. Another where he joked about how she should pack light when she leaves her safety net. I watched her hands shake. You knew, she said, voice trembling. I did. For how long? Long enough. She stared down at the papers. Why didn't you say anything? Because you were already gone. I just let you walk first. She looked up at me then, and for the first time in a long time, there was no superiority in her eyes. Just loss. I thought you'd fight for me, she said again, voice barely audible. I thought you'd choose me, I replied. She stood there for a moment longer, gripping the papers like they were an anchor. But I could see it in her face. There was nothing left to hold on to. She didn't say much after that, just stood there holding the pages like they'd burned her hands and left scars. I watched her try to process it all. Jason's betrayal, her own words in black and white, the fact that I hadn't fought, hadn't begged, hadn't even asked why. Maybe she came expecting closure. Maybe she thought a tearful apology would reset the board. But there was no board left. I'd already packed it away. I wish I could take it back, she said eventually. I nodded once slow. But you didn't. Silence again. The kind that fills the room like smoke. When she finally turned to leave, she paused at the door. Looked back like maybe I'd stop her. One last test. One final invitation to rewrite the ending. I just met her gaze and said, take care of yourself. She blinked, swallowed, then left. The door clicked shut behind her, soft but final. I didn't watch her walk away. A week later, I met with my accountant and signed the final documents to dissolve my shares in the last joint investment we'd held together. A real estate property she didn't even realize I still had access to. Some paperwork oversight, one she hadn't thought to revise before filing the divorce. She'd assumed it was hers now. She was wrong. I sold my portion quietly. Didn't argue for more than what was mine. Just cleanly, precisely, pulled the plug on the last thing connecting us. Her lawyer called the next day. Apparently, she wasn't happy. I didn't answer. The day after that, I boarded a flight. New job, new city, new everything. The move wasn't dramatic. Just necessary. A reset, not a rebellion. I didn't tell anyone except Amanda. She sent a one-word reply. Good. That was it. I deleted the last thread of our messages before the plane took off. Not out of pettiness, out of clarity. Some people burn their bridges. I just watched mine drift behind me, smaller and smaller until it disappeared. She reached out a few more times after that. One message, then another, each shorter than the last. No more smirking confidence. Just questions. Are you okay? Can we talk? Please. I never answered. Some things don't need a response. She wanted a man who'd break down. A man who'd fight for her like she was the prize. Instead, she got a man who walked away. A man who never raised his voice. Never looked back.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.